Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, plenty to talk about on today's podcast, but we should probably start with the elephant in the room. Manchester City 2, Aston Villa 1. This was nowhere near as bad as it's been made out to be. Like, the meltdown after this result is quite remarkable, and there's nothing like logging into Twitter after a game and seeing people's raw and real reactions. We were both there, mate. I think, first of all, I think it was, we're like 20 seconds away from executing the perfect game plan.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's always different when you lose it late on. It's that little bit more sickening. A little bit more. Yeah,
And City have history for this against us as well, mate, don't they?
yeah. And I think particularly as I think it felt like a game where some frustrating old habits crept back in. Obviously, I think it was we conceded with our first shot on target again, and it's a difficult game to really gauge. To be honest with you, I always find this when you play against City, to be honest with you, because of how slow they play. And the game never really, I know it's why I've quite kind of always had, I don't know if sympathy is the right word, but I always, whenever I go to the Etihad, and we've both been to the Etihad quite a lot of times to watch games, both in the home and away, and really, mate. Because their style of play is so slow, and that's the whole thing. It's slow. It's really difficult to get the ball off them. They just aim to kind of pass you to death, and as soon as someone blinks, they find the ball in behind, and it's how they've worked for so long. I've never really known a team as good as City that I often find as tough to watch sometimes. And I think it's really, really heightened when they don't have such a good season, when it's not being executed as well, because you get games like the Manchester Derby the other weekend where it just kind of feels like a slogfest for 90 minutes with no one able to really carve out any openings. And I always find, particularly when you play them late on in the season, the team like Villa in this instance always looks really leggy, and you're kind of hard to decide is that because we're playing this really slow style of football and we're kind of forced into playing it that you kind of have to play on counter attacks and everything looks a little bit sloppy and messy. You're kind of like, are we leggy, or is that just the opposition? And yeah, it's always, I always just find it a really difficult barometer of where you're at. And you see how you in the game where we played them at home earlier on in the season, where when we played them on our terms and we're the home side and we're on the offensive, how difficult the test can be for them. When the game's played on our terms, when you go to the Etihad and you're forced to play against City, against City's way of playing. It's just so difficult to kind of gauge exactly where we kind of sat. I don't think we had a great game, and you kind of look at how from the club, from Emery, from the players, nobody's really seeming like it's the be all and end all. So I don't know what the plan was for this game, how important we saw it as being, but yeah, I just found it a really difficult yardstick, to be honest with you, mate.
Yeah, I think it's not helped by the fact that the day before Spurs obviously go and lose their game to Nottingham Forest because I've been saying for weeks that our season depends on this game and the Newcastle game, which to an extent I still do believe. But when Forest go and get that win and already like extend that gap there, and we've played an extra game than them, I think, and we've definitely played an extra game than a few of the other teams that do surround us. Like there is uh, even more pressure added to sort of go and get the result to keep yourself within touch and distance. And that we're like 20 seconds into the game, and Rashford's hit the post, amazing piece of skill, gets the shot away, and it could be a totally different game, you know, as soon as it started. But I think there were a few decisions that before the game and during the game that Emery sort of probably should and does need to take a bit of responsibility for. We've both said multiple times we love seeing Tillemans a bit further up the pitch, that it's a position that he can do very well in. It just against City when they have so much possession, as you say, mate, and slow it down, you want Tillemans just that little bit further back so he's involved in the game. And it did kind of feel like any time that Buba and Onana sort of received the ball, which wasn't actually that often really, because our sort of our distribution from goalkeeper to defense was just pretty shocking all round in this game. It just kind of felt like they also were getting suffocated by the sort of relentlessness of that Manchester City midfield. And Tielemans obviously plays the pass into Rashford that I mentioned 20 seconds in, mate, which is a really good chance. But it felt like for a lot of this game, Yuri wasn't in it, and that's through no fault of his own. I think it's just a combination of he should have been playing a little bit deeper. We weren't necessarily as great playing through the thirds, and you know that City, even on a bad day, are going to press you into oblivion. The first goal is a really frustrating one to concede. They're both really frustrating to concede, but the first one, I've seen there's obviously been a lot of discourse about Disassi, which we'll get onto, and Cash. I don't want to say gets done in a similar way, but I think the difference between Cashy's contribution or lack thereof, as interpreted by some people, and Disassi's is Cash does what every defender's taught to do in this situation. The ball is played out to Marmoush, who kind of has a free roll. Cashy is a bit late getting out, if we are being super critical. He kind of fronts him square on, but he's getting forced back into his box. Cashy does what he needs to do, except from win the ball off Marmoush, which I know is frustrating to say. Very quick feet. He gets the shot away, the cross away, sorry, which deflects off Konsa, which I think throws everybody off balance. And then it's a shot which is hit pretty hard, I think it's fair to say, but straight at Emmy, which he then kind of parries into his own net. There's a lot to unpack here, but it does feel like if, as you said, mate, first shot on target conceded. This is a very Aston Villa 24-25 goal to concede, isn't it? And it does kind of feel like we sort of reverted to type early on here, and it put like needless pressure on us, really.
Yeah, you kind of see really kind of revisionist takes them, don't you? On like really reactionary. Emmy, he's not been at it this season, blah blah blah. We've not to kind of fast forward, but you see it with the last goal. Particularly after I think Brentford away is the one that I've got in my head of games where we were like, Axel Disassi, man, at right back, been an absolute revelation. Really, really enjoyed him there. Everyone wants him to join. Gets beaten by Marmoush, and then and I do think this is where, again, like maybe you do kind of look at the gaffer and you look at how Disassi struggled in Paris at right back, up against, was it Doué who was playing on the left at that time? Kvaratskhelia?
There was, but they'd swapped, but
Yeah.
for the goal he's done by
I think everyone was giving him a hard time, to be honest with you, and like he really struggled in Paris. And then we've kind of put him out on that wing, and I think as soon as we did that, Doku is there, and you can see that Pep has clearly identified Disassi one-on-one against Doku's one of the best one-on-one players in the Premier League, and I managed to isolate Disassi, and it's not really Disassi's fault. He has played right back. We signed him as a centre half. That's where he'd been playing for Chelsea. We put him out there against a good team in PSG, and he struggled. And then Unai's done it again against City. And this is not a criticism of Unai, but I do think we kind of need to learn to where we draw the line between, oh yeah, this player's not very good, and actually maybe this player's been put in a difficult position. As with Emmy, I'm torn between saying it's unlucky and poor goalkeeping. I think it's probably a combination of the two. He kind of flaps at it, as you say, mate, but pushes it
off his foot, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, pushes it onto his own foot, which puts it in the back of the net. So there is an unlucky nature to it, but I mean, he'll know it wasn't good enough. But yeah, it's a difficult one, mate, and it hasn't put the best kind of lens on the weekend, but it is quite surprising to see kind of how so many have forgotten the position that we're in. And ultimately, we've taken 3 points from Newcastle and Man City. If we'd have drawn those two games and really, really competed and come away with 2 points, I think everyone would have been like, oh, fair, we've kept it in the race. And I know that means you're then, one of the main disappointments with losing is that we've given points to City. So I know that there is obviously that angle to it as well, in that it's kind of a 6 point loss. But my point is in that I do think from a solely Villa point of view, if we had drawn these two games and we'd have got 2 points, I think the kind of general sentiment around the team would have been positive. We'd taken 3 points from the two games, and it's like the wheels have fallen off. There are still a lot of games to go. I still do believe that even if we'd won both of these games, like Fulham and Bournemouth are still very difficult tests. I think in the last 2 seasons, Bournemouth away has been a tough game for us, and I think it will be again this season. So, who knows that those games could have been the banana skin. There still could be, but we don't know. But I still do believe we're in the hunt. There's still a lot of football still to be played, but it is there's no denying it makes it a harder task.
Yeah, I think the frustration for me with Disasi comes. He's a centre back playing right back. He's done okay against okay teams, but against the big teams, we've now seen there's some crazy discourse about Disasi being unfortunate in the duel. He's not unfortunate. He's got it absolutely wrong. Like let's not get this twisted. The touch from Doku, in like two minds of class touch or it wasn't intended, but he's so quick to react that he's able to get it back out of his feet in any case. I don't necessarily think that it was an invitation for Disasi to come and take the ball. He shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't, like, as I said with the first chance with Kashi sort of backs off Marmoush, gives him the space to kind of drive at him, but he squared him up. So he's put himself in a position where it's more likely that he can take the ball rather than just dealing a blow to Marmoush. And same goes here for Disasi. It's a huge blow, and everybody knows who's winning that foot race, and there's acres of space in behind as well. And it's a bit frustrating because, albeit Konsa's not a right back, Konsa at right back is considerably better than Disasi. So if we're going to make that change and unsettle the defence, we may as well play people in their stronger positions. And Disasi is undoubtedly a centre half, and in this scenario, Konsa is the better right back. But again, you've got a right back sat on the bench in Garcia, and you have to wonder why. I can understand against PSG and Man City, to be fair, why you wouldn't want to throw Garcia on, especially after, was it the Liverpool game where he kind of fires the ball back and it's Jota or whoever it was that, gifts a goal basically.
Yeah.
Mistakes happen, but my beef with the Disasi one is it was misjudged on many levels from Unai, from Disasi, and a lot of people digging Dean out as well. You probably have to look at whoever was, I can't even remember at this moment who was playing on the left, whether it was Morgan, whether it was, I think JJ had come off at this point. There's obviously it's Nunes who's the right back who goes and scores, so it's not Dean's man in any case. There's an overload that's created there. They scored with the perfect goal. But for me, for large portions of this game, I think we were good value. City dominated possession, it's to be expected. City XG 1.33, Villa 1.76. Obviously, Rashford scores the penalty. Who else? Glad to know that we finally got a penalty taker, mate, with 4 games left in the season. We both created 3 big chances. City had 14 shots, which was double the amount of shots that we had. We'd forced a couple of saves from Ortega as well. The game was a lot closer than people have given it credit for, if we're being totally honest. And on another day, we escaped with a point, and it's 4 points from those 2 games, and it's happy days, and the hunt is still on. I'm still optimistic that we get a Champions League spot, mate. I know the games are difficult, as you said. The Spurs result side seem to be coming off a little bit for Forest. I know we've got some incredibly tough games. City have the easiest run-in, undoubtedly. Newcastle still have to play Arsenal as well. So there's a lot that can and will change. But if we miss out on Champions League, it's not going to be because we didn't beat Man City. Yeah. It's going to be because we drew away to Ipswich. It's going to be because we lost away to Chelsea. There's so many games that it's going to be because we drew at home to Bournemouth. That's probably arguably the biggest shocking result of the season in terms of a game that we quite literally.
I think we've got 1 point, haven't we, from Ipswich this season? Was it a draw at home and a defeat away?
Did we lose away, or was it a draw? I think it was. I think it was a draw, but it felt like a defeat.
Oh yeah, it was. It was. Yeah, it was 2 points, and then I think we drew at home as well.
Yeah, and it's like these are teams that we should be beating. So for us to be in this situation now where we still can get Champions League football, but we do have some very difficult games to sort of manage, I think it's potentially unfair for us to look at these games and say this is why we didn't do it. There's so many times we've dropped points early on in the season where in games that we should have won or games where we didn't even bother turning up. Um, so should at the end of the season we maybe fall short and it's Europa or Conference League, obviously that's not like it'd be wrong of both of us to come on here and complain about that, mate, because of the journey that we've been on. It would be a great sort of impression of being a Manchester United or Manchester City fan, wouldn't it? But obviously the reality of our financial situation does heavily dictate on us finishing in the Champions League. So I think that's why there is that pressure there. But yeah, I don't think we're gonna like when all is said and done, this isn't a game that cost us Europe. And if that's how people are looking at it, then you're wrong, because as I say, we've dropped so many points this season.
Yeah.
But there's cause for celebration, I guess, mate, with the news that came out today about the redevelopment of the North Stand. Uh, Long overdue, and it's one of them things that it's been like sort of in tandem with promises that needed to be made from local government in terms of improving infrastructure around Villa Park, which arguably for me is more important than expansion. Like even if you want to do anything at Villa Park, it's an absolute nightmare to get there, even for local, like really local people, like immediately around in Birmingham. Obviously, I come from Sheffield, you come from Manchester, but people come from far and wide to Villa Park. So the infrastructure is something that does need sorting. I do find it interesting that it's we've spoke about this for years, really, mate, haven't we, in terms of the development and what can be done, and the options do seem somewhat limited. Now we're going to take the capacity in the North Stand to over 12,000, which is double the capacity currently, or just over. And it appears that they're just basically renovating the North Stand. So there's all of the club offices that are currently housed in the North Stand. They'll be moved out. Concourses will be extended. They're putting more seats in as well. Obviously, we were part of that bid to host the Euros in 2028. And in order to do that, I think we needed to hit a certain capacity. So this is all part of those plans. Better late than never, I guess. I think it's difficult because they've clearly been, as I say, they've been tangoing with the council, and it doesn't help that the Birmingham City Council went bankrupt a couple of months ago either, in terms of infrastructure. But there was talk. It was before we qualified for the Conference League, wasn't it? I think it was under Purslow, about closing the North Stand, demolishing, rebuilding a mega stand there. Almost mirroring the whole end. But that was kind of put on pause because they didn't want renovation and finances to take a hit while we were sort of pushing to be in European competition. But it appears that a lot of this work isn't as invasive as that, and a lot of this can be done without the current capacity being eaten up for match going fans. So it's going to be interesting to see how this is done, mate. But it feels long overdue.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's important to mention as well is that I don't think, and forgive me, I'm no accountant, but I don't think these kind of projects impact PSR or FFP, whatever you want to call it. I think there's three. I think if it's like spending on like facilities and infrastructure, spending on your academy, and then spending on your women's team as well, I think are three things which don't affect PSR or FFP. So for anyone that was concerned, why are we fighting for our lives financially and committing to this kind of multi-million-pound project, that would be why. It's long overdue. You're absolutely right. I'm really interested to see how they do it, considering they have said it won't affect match day attendance in the meantime. So no one's going to go seatless or ticketless, as it were, for games whilst this project is going on. Really, really excited to see how that works. Looks like it's going to be done for 2027 in time for the 2028 Euros. It looks great, I think it's fair to say. It's really, really interesting in that I think we're going to do this stand up and then almost immediately, like even in the mock-ups that we've seen, you can see the North Stand. It looks fantastic. It's got this really modern, like, glass facade, Aston Villa in big capital letters, the logo in the middle. Obviously, we'll sit opposite the warehouse, which is this kind of multi-purpose concert venue that's going to kind of be a almost box park type thing on a match day. I think you've then got the newly renovated club shop on the other side, this beautiful stand, but in the mock-ups you can see the Doug Ellis off to one side, and you kind of look at the exterior of that and you go, yeah, maybe that needs a lick of paint, shall we say, in the years to come as well. But I think it's, it's really, really good. And I think actually we've done such a good job with the Trinity Road. I think that still looks like a really, really modern, really good looking stand that I think that will stand the test of time. I think the problem with the North Stand is I think it's aged so quickly, and has very quickly become not fit for purpose, particularly when, as you say, mate, it houses all the made kind of day-to-day goings on. I've seen most clubs now have their media teams, etc., based at the training ground. That's not the case for Villa, or at least it hasn't been in recent years. They're all based at Villa Park, which is obviously a little bit inconvenient because stuff only happens at Villa Park once or now twice a week sometimes. So yeah, I think it makes a lot more sense for the club. But yeah, infrastructure is the big thing, mate, particularly around rail travel. I know Witten Station was subject to a lot of conversations, potentially helping to facilitate this. So hopefully all of that kind of lines up. Aston Station as well probably needs a bit of a help. Those are the two main ways of getting in. And hopefully they've got to do all this without eating up too much space in the car park, which again is another big issue because of where the ground is located. You can't really expand the Doug Ellis because there's the road and then houses on the other side. So you can't build backwards from either the Trinity Road or the Doug Ellis because the Trinity Road also then backs onto, I think, Aston Park. So I don't think we could expand into that land. We can't push the whole turn backwards. You can only really remodel the ground that you're working with before you look at having to potentially relocate. So I think they've done everything that they can, really, and providing that it all goes to plan and we have this up and running by 2027, really, really excited to see it.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that we're not relocating. I think it's obviously what makes every team unique and special enough. Aston certainly isn't the most convenient place with those links at the moment, but it would be a very sad day if Villa Park had to leave Aston because it serves its community. That's the whole point of football. I think it's very easy to lose sight of that, but I think it is important to acknowledge the financial obstacles that are ahead of us by being situated where we are. So I trust that this obviously isn't something that's done on willy-nilly. This is obviously something that's been thought about, and as much grief as Chris Heck gets, and we've given Chris Heck as well on this podcast in terms of making the club profitable and attracting those big sponsorship deals and stuff like that. This is a massive step towards that. And we've just got to hope that we can still match those performances on the pitch, because it kind of feels like at the moment we're trying to move like a big club, but we can't because we're sort of bound financially. But Heck and the commercial team and all of this are massively benefiting from what has probably been 3 years of overperformance from Unai Emery in terms of what he's had to deal with and the squads and all of that. So long term, it'll be interesting to see how the club evolves commercially and the team as well. If we can maintain this, mate, obviously we're talking about trying to stay in the Champions League again. That's going to be massive for this off the field revenue. But the thing is as well, something that teams don't people don't necessarily acknowledge as much. So the silverware, right? People want to buy into something that is massive, something that's winning, and obviously we have as better opportunities we've ever had at this point to go and win the FA Cup, the pristine trophy. I don't like all of this talk about in recent years, and I don't know whether this, it's heavily being pushed by Sky Sports, who coincidentally have the rights to the Carabao Cup. But you got Jamie Carragher going on telly saying that the Carabao Cup's the greatest cup competition now, better than the FA Cup. Could you imagine him saying that as a player? Could you imagine Jamie Carragher saying that the Coca-Cola Cup or the Carling Cup or any of these other cups that I think Liverpool may have won once during his playing days, maybe twice, I can't remember off the dome, is better than the FA Cup, a competition which is like globally regarded as the cup competition domestically. It's crazy to think, isn't it, mate? But it's a massive game that we've got against Crystal Palace, and as it kind of felt like the wheels were maybe falling off Palace as well, they go last night and put a massive dent into Arsenal. Two wonderful goals from Eze and Mateta, weren't they, mate? Absolutely dreamy. I'm I'm worried about Palace, but I do just have this feeling that Wembley, big pitch, we could beat anyone. And I have this same feeling about, weirdly enough, mate, and people in the comments are probably going to think I sound crazy. I'm more worried about Nottingham Forest in a final. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but Nottingham Forest in a final than Manchester City in a final. I honestly think that we do City in a final at Wembley on that pitch, one-off game, do or die. But obviously, before we get to that, we have to beat Palace, and that's it. That's the sort of interesting, sticky situation that we find ourselves in.
Isn't it crazy? There's that cliche, mate. Like a week is a long time in football, and I think if you polled the fans a week ago about how they felt about this semi-final, or polled them now about, particularly in the light of Arsenal's draw with Palace last night, I think you'd get two very different outcomes. It's crazy, really, how quickly things can change. I think the main thing is going to be how quickly we can pick ourselves up. We seem to be quite a resilient team these days. It's probably the thing that you can credit Unai with the most, is that there's been a real mentality shift around the club, and it does feel that way. And this is going to kind of be the ultimate test, because it was a real sickener, not to go over the City game again, but it really did kind of feel like it knocks the stuffing out of what was a really, really positive moment for the club. And, for, as you say, when you look at the kind of online sentiment, you'd think we were back to kind of square one. And look, when everyone's had a few beers in the Wembley sunshine, and we're walking up Wembley Way and the arch is there, no one's going to be thinking about the Mateus Nunes' 94th minute winner or whatever it was. We'll be thinking about how great it is to be there and in that moment. I understand that. And that's going to be the tricky thing. I think we do have to, it's a really difficult thing, and it kind of feels like the Bruges game in a way, whereby you kind of split between, you have to really respect the opponent, and then kind of feeling that, look, at this stage in this competition, having a game against, as it was in the knockouts against Bruges, or in the FA Cup semi-final against Palace, is probably about as good as you're going to get, particularly when you look at, there's none of the traditional big six left in the competition bar Man City. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. The final would be my only. I'm almost inclined. Well, I definitely agree with you, mate. I think we could. I think the one thing is just the kind of optics and mentality of it all, whether the idea of Forest just feels naturally a bit more of a. We showed midweek, and look, I don't want to make this a final preview against a team we don't even know what we're going to play, but I think so much of the game midweek is just, oh my God, we're playing City at the Etihad. We've got to sit in. We've got to put 10 men behind the ball, and we've got to counterattack whenever we get the chance. And you kind of do that by default, rather than just going out and playing the game and giving them the challenge that this version of Man City can't sometimes take. I think if Wednesday night was at Villa Park, as I said, I think it's a very different game. I think that's kind of what we have to get into at the weekend, is just breaking out of that kind of mindset, treating it as what it is. Look, like, we know that Palace is a real kind of bogey team for us, but we have the better team, and I think it's crazy to say that we're having the better season. But we are in this place where we've won none of our last 4 games against Palace, to losing 3 of those, conceding 13. They knocked us out the League Cup as well earlier on in this season, and so they are a team that recently we've really, really struggled with. I'm not reading too much into that. I don't think there's something about the way that Palace set up that is just really difficult for Villa to kind of figure out. I think when you look at the result, towards the back end of last season, I think that was just a team that was gassed. I think it was a bit of a testimonial for Villa. Unai Emery's son was on the fucking bench. So that tells you all that you need to know about that. And I think the game at Selhurst Park earlier this season was a real combination of things. And so, I think we need to get over the kind of Wembley hoodoo as well, which kind of looms over us. We've lost 6 of our last 8 at Wembley. And so there's all of these records which kind of stack up, which do create a bit of nerves and a bit of anticipation. And I don't think this team will have any time for them at all. And that's, I think, what you got to hope for.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. I've got to ask you for a prediction. I've got to ask you for a prediction. If we're gonna go with it, I'll give you the grace. I'll go first, mate. I think that Villa win this game 2-1. I can't see us keeping a clean sheet because we haven't really, and I'm gonna be interested. It's gonna be interesting to see how the team lines up. And like, there's been a lot of we could probably do a whole podcast on Ollie Watkins, mate, and we probably
Yeah.
should at some point, shouldn't we? But it's going to be interesting to see how we line up. I was we mentioned before the game as well in terms of the rotation with Matson and Dean and how that would look. I think, City is obviously a game where you definitely favour somebody like Luca Dean defensively over Matson, but we're kind of in this situation. Like, Matson should have come on in that game because Dean could have feasibly got sent off and was walking a tightrope for large portions of that game on a yellow card. But there's just something about big pitch Matson. Like, he kind of, like, it feels like he's in a good moment right now. But yeah, in terms of rotation, I'm not sure, like, does Ollie start? Do you start Rashford? Like,
Mm.
Rashford could be, if Villa win the FA Cup. This is crazy. If Villa win the FA Cup, Rashford could be the first player ever to win the FA Cup back to back with two different teams, which is
That's
crazy.
crazy, isn't it? That is crazy. It'd be interesting as well, like the boys that would get a medal. So that's the interesting thing
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Asensio as well in the Champions League, isn't it? Like if PSG do go all the way and win it, he gets a Champions League medal, which is kind of cool, kind of painful. And so yeah, like John and stuff would get their FA Cup medals, I imagine. But yeah, it'd be this is a really good moment, mate. As you say, I think it would be. I think I would give Ollie the nod. I think he's earned it. I think again, I think he deserved more than 15 minutes against City. And the only way I can kind of reason that is that we were kind of prepping him to get this run at Wembley. I think it would be a really nice nod for him. Obviously, there was a real kind of telling interview on Sky the other week where he talks about how disappointed he was to be left out against PSG. And I think penalty aside, I don't think Rashford was great against City. I think Watkins clearly has that hunger. I think would suit us nicely as a kind of outball, as you say, on that big old Wembley pitch. He's going to do a lot of running, which I think we will definitely need as well. And so, yeah, I would give Watkins the nod in terms of the score prediction. Don't worry, I'm not dodging it. 2-1, 2-1 is just always a really safe bet, I think, with
Yeah.
Villa. We're such a 2-1 team. We're such a second half team as well. It wouldn't surprise me if we went behind. I do think this Palace team have got goals in them as well. I think we have that thing as well where Ismail Assar has scored in every game he's ever played against Villa. So that's, we've got to count in that he's going to get his de facto goal as well. So there's one.
Gerrard wanted to sign him as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. There will be goals in it, mate. There will be goals for sure. I think these games, particularly when you get late in the FA Cup, these teams that aren't normally in the picture at this kind of stage in the competition, they just kind of go hell for leather, don't they?
Yeah.
And I don't think Palace have ever won a trophy.
No, they haven't.
So it's a huge occasion for them. I'll go, yeah, real barn burner, classic, 3-2 the Villa.
Take that, mate. I'll take that. I don't know. Wembley's gonna go
Mate,
a
that's
crazy.
not what
Well,
I need,
yeah.
to be honest. I'm
As
sure
long
that
as we
might.
win, Wembley's gonna be so full of anxiety during. Especially if we go 1-0 down. I do worry about the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But like, I'm sure everybody's gonna get behind the boys. It's a massive occasion. We're 2 games away from. Oh, we've not won the FA Cup. When was the last time we won the FA Cup? Was it the 50s? It was ages ago, weren't it?
1957.
Yeah. So, like, this is something that's so, like, it's a part of our history. It's part of our DNA, but we've not won it in like 80 odd years. So it's about time we do something about that and take this seriously. Let's come and get the job done. But guys, let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Let us know your score predictions for the Crystal Palace game. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do, and like the podcast if you haven't already. Up the Villa.